All right, powerful brother. I remember the last time I interviewed you, brother. You said that the world was about 8,000 years old. You remember that?
6,000 years old. You
I think
asked
you
me
said 8,000.
6,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
6,000. I got to go back to the video.
Right.
Damn, that's even bad when you say it's
Right.
about 6,000 years old. Do you still feel that way, or do you still believe that now?
Well, absolutely. But I first want to say I was hoping that everyone understood the point that I was making.
Go ahead.
The point that I was making is not that the physical universe, man, animal life is 6,000 years. I always speak from the vantage point of a historian. So when I said to you, and I thought I made it clear, but I actually read the comments on that particular video, and a lot of people was like, "Wow, I value a lot of the things Brother Zion Lex says. I don't agree with everything, but I think he's smart." But when he made that statement, that was like, "Whoa." The world is 6,000 years old. Well, Zion Lex always speaks from the vantage point of a historian. And historians begin with the historical period. The historical period is not to be confused with many periods that precede it. For instance, Dr. Ben teaches correctly that there was no Kemet prior to the Sibyllian period in terms of civilization. And when we talk about civilization, we're talking about all of the facets that come together to make what we call civilization, such as writing, farming, agriculture, government, law, the building of major cities, canals. When those things come together, then we have a civilization. So when you asked me how old the world is, I could only speak correctly from the vantage point of where the pen begins, history. We don't have any history older than 6,000 years. The oldest writings in the world do not date back prior to 6,000 years. There's no writing in Kemet that dates back further than 6,000 years. So let's be accurate and let's be honest. There were a lot of people that jumped out the window and was like, wow, I can't believe he said that. But most people don't, I guess, didn't understand the space that I was in and where I was coming from. I'm always speaking from the vantage point of history, and history begins with writing, meaning history begins with the account of the people. The first account of people began approximately 6,000 years ago to be recorded. Sure, there were civilizations that existed before, but history begins with recordation. And from that vantage point, I have to say 6,000 years.
What if I was to tell you, my brother, that in Southern Kemet, there is an astrological calendar circles in Southern Kemet that is over 8,000 years old? What would you say to me, brother?
I would say that makes sense because number one, I know about the Ishango bone, right? The mathematical bone that's actually in South Africa. That's even much older than that. It's damn near 200,000 years old.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So I'm familiar with these things, but the point is, we don't speak of a civilization until several facets that I named just now come together. So you had villages before you had civilizations. You even had culture before you had civilizations. But having a village and having a culture doesn't necessarily make you a civilization. Civilization is when a group of people settle. The majority of our ancestors prior to this, the historical period, or prior to what we classically call the beginnings of civilization, which is the Bronze Age period, several of our ancestors were migrating throughout the world. And they were migrating close to riverbanks, sources of water. It is only when people began to settle in areas where ideas began to build upon one another, because you are around so many people that are settling, so now you're able to trade ideas, that the beginnings of civilization begin to carve itself out, so that we see government structure, we see agriculture, we see inkling of morality, so to speak. We see writing. When those things come together, that's when you have a civilization. So yes, we may find calendars in various parts of Africa, which may show that our ancestors possessed certain knowledge prior to the classical historical period. But we still don't call that instance being the the beginning of the historical period because there's no writing from that period. Like the astronomical chart is a drawing, but there's no writing. So there's no one expounding or sharing their knowledge in the form of, you know, words and speech.